let's talk about Blade Chimera. If you've been eyeing this game since its January 16th release, you're probably wondering what the hype is all about. Well, buckle up, because this is one wild ride, and I'm here to break it down for you in all its glory, and yes, even its flaws. Whether you're playing on PC or Nintendo Switch, there's a lot to chew on here. By the time we're done, you'll know if it's worth sinking your precious time and money into. So, first impressions. You boot up Blade Chimera, and boom, you're hit with this visually stunning opening sequence. It's like a sci-fi action movie and a fantasy epic had a baby, and that baby decided to wield a giant sword and fight monsters. Right off the bat, I was hooked. The intro sets up this gritty, futuristic world where humans and chimeras, think mythical beast hybrids, are locked in a brutal conflict. You play as Kai, a soldier who gets unwillingly fused with a chimera. If you're thinking, that sounds like it's going to get messy, you're absolutely right. Let's get into the meat of the gameplay because, let's be honest, that's what we're all here for. Combat is the star of the show in Blade Chimera. Picture this. You're in the middle of a fight, pulling off insane combos, dodging enemy attacks, and unleashing your chimera abilities like it's second nature. It's fast-paced, it's intense, and it makes you feel like an absolute beast, pun intended. But here's the kicker. The game doesn't hold your hand. If you go in thinking you can just button mash your way to victory, prepare to get smacked around. The game rewards precision and timing, so when you nail a perfect combo, it feels incredibly satisfying. Now, let me tell you about the controls. On PC, they're buttery smooth. Mouse and keyboard work surprisingly well for an action game. If you've got a controller, though, that's where it really shines. On the Switch, it's a slightly different story. Don't get me wrong, it's still fun to play, but the Joy-Cons can feel a bit finicky, especially during fast-paced battles. If you're anything like me, you'll find yourself blaming the controller every time you die. It wasn't me. It was the drift. Sure, buddy. Speaking of dying, let's talk difficulty. This game is no walk in the park. It's more like a sprint through a park where everything is trying to kill you. Some of the bosses? Absolute nightmares. There's one early on, a giant scorpion with electric attacks that had me screaming at my screen. But here's the thing. Every time you lose, you learn something. It's the classic get good philosophy, and honestly, I kind of love it. The challenge makes victory so much sweeter. What about the world itself? Oh, it's stunning. The environments range from dark, eerie forests to sleek, high-tech labs, and each one is packed with detail. On PC, with the graphics cranked up, it's a feast for the eyes. On the Switch, it's still pretty, but you'll notice some compromises. Textures that aren't as crisp, occasional frame drops. It's not a deal breaker, but it's there. The monsters you face are another highlight. The variety is insane. Everything from creepy bug-like creatures to hulking dragons that could probably swallow you whole. And they're not just there to look cool. Each one has unique attack patterns that keep you on your toes. There's this one fire wolf that literally made me pause the game just to breathe. I mean, who thought it was a good idea to give a wolf the ability to summon fire tornadoes? Now, let's dive into the story. I'll be honest, it's a bit of a mixed bag. The premise is solid. Kai gets fused with a chimera and has to navigate this whole new reality while dealing with shady corporations and rebel factions. There's drama, betrayal, and enough twists to keep you guessing. But, and this is a big but, some of the dialogue is, how do I put this nicely, cheesy. There's one villain who goes on these long monologues that made me roll my eyes so hard. I thought they'd get stuck. At one point, I found myself thinking, dude, just fight me already. That said, if you're a fan of over-the-top storytelling, you'll probably eat it up. Now, every game has its flaws, and Blade Chimera is no exception. Let's address the elephant in the room. The camera? Oh, the camera. When it works, it's fine. But in tight spaces or chaotic fights, it can feel like it's actively sabotaging you. I lost count of how many times I got hit because the camera decided it was more interested in the wall than the action. It's frustrating, but not game-breaking. Another downside? The difficulty spikes. Most of the game is challenging in a fun, fair way. But every now and then, you hit a boss or section that feels downright cruel. It's like the game is testing your patience and your sanity. If you're someone who doesn't enjoy banging your head against a metaphorical wall, this might be a turnoff. Let's switch gears and talk about the music. Oh man, the soundtrack is incredible. It's this epic mix of techno beats and orchestral swells that perfectly matches the game's vibe. During fights, it pumps you up, and during quieter moments, it sets the mood beautifully. I've actually added a couple of tracks to my playlist. If you see me headbanging at my desk, now you know why. And then there's the replay value. This game gives you plenty of reasons to come back for more. Multiple difficulty levels, unlockable abilities, and a co-op mode that lets you team up with a friend. Let me tell you, co-op is a blast. There's something about tackling a giant boss with a buddy that makes the game even more fun. Just make sure your friend actually knows how to play, or you'll spend half the time reviving them. Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything. Okay, here's where I get real with you. Is Blade Chimera worth it? Honestly, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're a fan of action games and don't mind a bit of a challenge, this is a no-brainer. The combat is top-notch, the world is immersive, and the sense of accomplishment you get from beating a tough boss is unbeatable. But if you're someone who gets frustrated easily or prefers games with a more polished story, you might want to think twice. Overall, Blade Chimera is a wild, flawed, but ultimately rewarding experience. It's the kind of game that sticks with you even after you've put down the controller. Sure, it's not perfect. The camera needs work, the story could use some polish, and the difficulty spikes might drive you up the wall. But at the end of the day, it's got heart and claws, and maybe some fire tornadoes. So, if you're ready to dive into a world of chimeras, epic battles, and a bit of chaos, go ahead and give it a shot. Just remember, dodge roll. Always dodge roll.